So, Dr. Marksbury, thank you for coming on the broadcast tonight. And how you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Yeah, really appreciate you. Can you tell us about the bill that is currently waiting to be passed now?
Sure. Known as House Bill 71. And what it does, the bill says in the state of Louisiana, any monument or statue or memorial that's dedicated or honored to a United States veteran cannot be destroyed, desecrated, removed, damaged, or anything like that. And then they added an amendment, and they said that if a municipality wishes to have a vote of the people, now what happened in New Orleans, of the people, and the people decide they want to change something and move it, then that's the way it will happen. And so it was approved by the committee, which was a huge hurdle. That's the toughest hurdle sometimes. And so now it'll go to the entire House in the legislature. And then when they're done with it, if they pass it, then it has to go through the Senate.
I got you. So, I mean, what do you think the likelihood of this being passed?
I think the likelihood of the passing it in the House is pretty high. Keep in mind that it's honoring veterans.
Right.
So there's not a whole lot of elected politicians that want to vote against veterans.
Right.
The Senate, which is Olario's chamber, and he's the one that stopped this last year and really stopped this year. But if it gets to the floor of the Senate, which is, I think it would pass. But if they stop it from getting to the floor, I don't think it probably will. But, hey, it's a small victory, but it's still a victory, and life still goes on. So we're still moving on it.
No, absolutely. We really appreciate, you and the Monumental Task Committee's hard work and efforts for sure. So thank you. I was listening to a radio program earlier. I think it was you was on Corey Johnson, and I was listening, and there was a caller that called in after that, and he brought up the point that, and I'm not for sure if this is true. It's why I'm bringing it up, that it's not going to cover these three monuments. It's only going to be monuments after this. After Jeff Davis, after Lee, Beauregard. Is that inaccurate or is that accurate?
It's neither. It's
okay.
If Landrieu tears everything down before it becomes law,
right,
it wouldn't happen. If for some reason Landrieu has it, because most laws in Louisiana go into effect like July 1st.
Okay.
So it's really, if he hasn't torn them down by July 1st, then my guess is that we might go back and do some more court action. If they decide they want to tear them down after that becomes law.
No, absolutely. Dr. Marksbury, we had tried to speak with a couple of local attorneys about trying to file a suit, in federal court, and try to, let me back up. I'm stumbling on my words here. Mayor Landrieu said zero city dollars were going to be used in this whole process, and we see this is just complete farce. I mean, of course, there's police dollars tied up, firefighter dollars tied up. So we see that's a lie. And I tried to speak to a couple of attorneys about filing, a lawsuit and helping, us to do so. I mean, in your opinion, I know you're not an attorney, but in your opinion, is there any grounds, do you believe, to file a suit, in the matter of Landrieu not being truthful and lying? Do you think there's any merit for filing a suit?
Yeah, remember, I filed a suit.
Right.
It's not that hard. I think there's two of them that are possible. In federal court, the city attorney got up there and said that they would use bona fide contractors, bonded people, experienced people to move these valuable works of art, because we were arguing these works of art are worth millions of dollars. And the city said, we will do that. Now, obviously they didn't do that at Liberty. They used, firemen, they used people from Sewage and Water Board, and others, and they almost toppled over. But Liberty wasn't argued that day about the artistic value of these three.
Right.
So when it comes to Jefferson Davis, assuming that's going to be next, if they use a contractor that's not bonded, that's not experienced, that really has got no record of dealing with something that's worth, millions of dollars with regards to the artistic value of it, then you can go back to federal court, and I think we probably will do that, and charge the city with contempt of court. In other words, they lied before the court. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. Unfortunately, we can't do that until they take down one of these monuments and don't use the people they said.
Right.
So that's in federal court. Now, with regard to the saying that they're not going to use taxpayer dollars, that one I think would just go into state court, because you'd have to have a federal challenge, and there's no federal challenge. I mean, that's been said publicly. It's been said all kinds of places, and obviously the amount of money, for example, with the police, 2 nights ago at Davis, 24/7, 16 police there all the time, and the barricades and the trucks and everything. They're spending a lot of money.
Yeah, they spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in police protection already since this started, the Sunday before last, I believe it was. So, they've spent a ton of money already.
Yes, and the question is, why? I don't know how the Inspector General Quantrano's office works. Maybe it's like the FBI, they don't comment on ongoing investigations. I do know that office has received complaints. Trust me, they received complaints that they're using tax dollars when he said he didn't.
Right.
And using city employees. So any of your listeners, you can go online to the New Orleans Inspector General's website and lodge a complaint. Yeah. And, if that office gets inundated with them, maybe they'll be starting to do something, because they need to look into how all this has transpired.
It's really incredible, Dr. Marksbury, that we just see, Mitch Landrieu and this administration and these entities just do what they want. They have just a complete disregard for our constitutional rights. I mean, you see now they've, walled off barricaded off the Jefferson Davis monument. They're making a gun-free zone.
Towing cars away.
Right.
Close to a church that might have a school on the premises. Yeah.
I mean, there's just a lot of things going on now. So they just are completely violating our constitutional rights now at this point.
I didn't hear they made it a gun-free zone.
Yeah, we had a caller call in who's there right now.
They're towing vehicles away. They're putting up signs, Dr. Marksbury, that say you can't park here, number one. Number two, if that doesn't work and they don't tow you away with that fictitious story, they're basically shooing people away by saying if you're open and carry, which we've seen lately.
Or just carrying a firearm, period, you're close to a school.
You're now, since there's a church nearby, you're within the 1,000 feet parameters. They're saying there's a school on the church premises that qualifies. It's probably like a nursery or a daycare.
But the school isn't registered as a school. So some of the people there at the monument are questioning that right now.
Yeah, they're finding loopholes and creating fictitious legislation, basically, to eradicate any open carry.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys, did you see the 2-page letter in the Advocate this morning?
I heard about it. I didn't read it.
I
did
read it?
Yes. And
no, you should read it.
Okay, who wrote that exactly? Can you tell me?
Sure, I'll tell you the story. A gentleman by the name of Frank Stewart. Frank Stewart has a great big building on Veterans Highway.
Yeah.
He's a wealthy man. He's 81 years old, and he's very active in nonprofit giving in New Orleans. He's on the Xavier board. He was on the Tulane board. He's given money to St. Augustine. And he's on 20 different boards for nonprofits. He spent his life giving money. He gave money to Mitch Landrieu when he ran the first time. The second time, he gave money to his dad. He gave money to his sisters. I mean, the man has been a supporter. But when Landrieu decided to do this with the monuments, Frank Stewart decided, I'm not going to support you anymore.
We're looking at it right now, yep.
And so last week, Frank Stewart hosted at his house a fundraiser to raise money for all the legal stuff that we're doing. And Mitch Landrieu decided to have a sit-down, with Tice Picayune, which he didn't really field questions. He just came and talked, and he said some things, and one of them was, he said, well, the businessmen aren't supporting me because they're afraid to come out, but there's some people like high roller. Now, when you guys think of high roller, what does that mean?
Like a gambler.
That's right. You think of a gambler, right?
Right.
If you're a high roller, they fly to Vegas and stuff. So he called him a high roller, and he called him out by name.
Wow.
And this man is the person saying, that the people want the monuments are calling up people, intimidating. He told him in name in the entire state of Louisiana. And
wow.
So what Frank Stewart did was he wrote a letter. He paid for that ad. As you can read that, that's 2 pages. He put it in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Lafayette. And he called him out publicly, and it says, Mitch Landrieu, shame on you, for talking to me when I supported your family. You divide the city like nobody. So you really have to read it because he talks about the monuments. He talks about what he's done. it's really fantastic. This is something that's going to hang around his head forever.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and you know, I was listening to an overview of it this morning, and I skimmed through it, but you know, you're right. It's pretty incredible that even Mitch Landrieu has starting to piss off the people that supported him, and pretty high profile type people like Mr. Stewart. So that's least that does well for the people on our side for sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell everybody two things.
Absolutely.
One is that Mitch Landrieu said, and it was in the paper last week, that Beauvoir said they didn't want Jefferson Davis. I knew that wasn't true because I knew they said they would. So I called up on Monday the executive director, the person in charge of Beauvoir. He said, yeah, we saw that story. Don't know why the mayor of New Orleans said that, because we'd love to have Jefferson Davis.
Yep.
And everything. So, that's one, let's call it fake news. The second one, which keeps going around and going around and going around, so if you guys from now on will respond to anybody that calls up so they understand this. Today at the hearings up in Baton Rouge, the city, this was government at work, this was representative government, so the deputy mayor came there and explained this went through a fair process, a democratic process. Mitch Landrieu said the people have spoken, the people never spoke. Mitch Landrieu says it's the will of the people, it was never the will of the people. This is the way this worked. Mitch Landrieu, the head of the executive branch of the government, goes to the council, the legislature branch of the government, and says, council members, would you please do an investigation on these 4 monuments because I think they violate the nuisance ordinance. So the council says, yes, we'll do that. So then they read what the ordinance says and says, okay, now when we do this, we have to do the following. We have to ask for written recommendations by the superintendent of NOPD, by the district attorney of the city, by the director of planning of the city, and the chief administrative officer of the city. Those are the 4 individuals that were the only 4 required to give a recommendation whether something was a nuisance. All 4 of those people have their jobs because of Mitch Landrieu. They work at his pleasure. He could fire them any day. So they're asking 4 subordinates, your boss said to do this, and we need a recommendation for it from you. So what do you think they're going to do? And that's fair. That's representative government. That's a joke.
No. And I believe some of these, 4 people definitely have some reign and rule over Mitch Landrieu.
I don't know if anybody. I don't know if he listens to anybody.
Well, I mean, because you start looking at these Walt Isaacson connections, and you start looking at how he was pushing for monument removal before the Dylan Roof shooting, and him and David Brock wrote that piece, and you just see a lot of connections. I mean, it's pretty outstanding.
His chips are all in like a high roller. It's all in. All of his chips are in on this bet. He has to win this, or it's just going to be a tarnish to his image forever.
We got about 45 seconds left of this break, Dr. Marksbury. If you can come back and do one more segment, I have some questions for you. How do we organize? We see the left and this Antifa crowd is very, very organized. So what do we need to do to come together and get all the groups that all support the one main thing, keeping these monuments up, keeping them clean, keeping everybody safe? We need to game plan on how we come together and outmaneuver these rogue entities. This is Battle of New Orleans Radio right here in the home of the First Amendment, 990 AM WGSO in the heart of the Crescent City. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Battle of New Orleans Radio right here on 990 AM WGSO. Let's go straight back to our guest, Dr. Marksbury.
He's the tip of the spear.
That's right.
The tip of the spear on this fight with the monuments.
Front and center.
And, man, we appreciate you always being available to come on our show and update our listeners on what's going on. We got about 4 minutes left, 5 minutes left on this segment. We're going to take some calls after this segment. I know we have David, VJ, a Flaming Liberal holding on. Hang in there. So back to Dr. Marksbury. Any more information you want to give our listeners on what we can expect to happen tomorrow, or is the HB71, any more information about that, or what can we do individually? I know they have this event this Sunday. Take Them Down Nola's promoting on their Facebook page that they're going to gather at Congo Square at 1:30, and they're going to be making their way, similar to what they did at Jackson Square, promoted at least. And as we saw last time, it was Tulane University buses that were unloading at Congo Square. We can expect that again Sunday, guys.
Monterowitz.
Exactly. And we're going to – and who knows? I mean, that's a long walk if they're going to walk from Congo to Lee Circle. So, I mean, I'm expecting maybe 3, 4 o'clock they might be banging their drums and having their little chants that rhyme. So what's your take on all that? It's so much information going on, Dr. Marksbury. Just fill our listeners in on what you would want from our listeners and from us.
Well, the HB71 probably won't go to the whole floor until maybe next week or even the week after. You know, they got to pick up enough bills and do that. People like us don't organize as well as people on the left. Left people have always organized.
They don't work.
They don't work, and they got outside funding coming in. I won't say that, but a lot of those people and take them down. You know, they've got ways of being able to have free time during the day, and a lot of people don't have that. What to do? Well, bodies make a difference.
Amen.
Bodies make a difference. And at these monuments, you know, I think it's been pretty good, and you all will agree that the city cannot keep a lid. They want to pretend they can keep a lid on when they're coming down, but they haven't done it. They're 0 for 1 so far. Actually, they're 0 for 2.
Yeah.
And if we get the word out and we move quickly, just need to get a bunch of people there, taking pictures, identifying, seeing the vehicles, looking at people wearing masks, not wearing masks. You know, to be able to get the word out, we need to do that. Not going to be able. No one's not promoting any kind of violence, you know, by any means. But I don't think we're going to get a big protest march. It just doesn't seem to happen that way. But there is a petition that just started circulating. Needs 10,000 signatures, and according to the lawyers that looked into this, that a petition with 10,000 signatures can force the city council to put something on the ballot. And this one would be to have an amendment to the city charter, which protects all monuments in the city. Now, they will delay that and fight that any way they can, and I think you have to have 1,000 signatures by the end of this month. I mean, 10,000, I'm sorry. So we can talk about that more if this is really going to happen, if there's enough volunteers to take out, you know, if you had, 500 people, you only need to get 20 signatures. You know, that's
right.
all. And we could pull that off. So that's something, that might happen. The legal action is still going on. Of course, anybody that's listening, your legislator and your state senator, call them up and tell them you support, HB71 to protect all monuments to veterans.
And Dr. Marksbury, listen, we don't have much time on the second left. Again, we appreciate it. What do you suggest for the people who want to defend the monuments when we come out there and say an organized rogue terrorist group like Antifa shows up and NOPD is standing down? What role should we take? Should we retreat? Should we stand down like the NOPD is doing? Should we be confrontational like them? What's your stance on that? We have 1 minute left.
That's a hard question to answer because if somebody's in your face and they're spitting in your face, it's pretty hard to just hold back.
Yeah.
I would answer that to be, don't be the aggressor. Don't be the aggressor, but respond accordingly. If somebody does something to you, then I think you have the full right to do something.
You have to protect yourself first and foremost.
I think that's it. And normally there's a bunch of people around, there's phones. Somebody would witness that. If somebody's in your face, spitting at you, shoving you, doing whatever they do, because all they're trying to do is disrupt. So that's what I would say.
All right, Dr. Marksbury, we're coming to this break. Thanks again for coming on the show. Hopefully the 3 monuments will still be up next week. Thanks for all the information.